Actually, wouldn't ask any questions. So I would say that I don't believe that Billy will be playing. He didn't practice. So obviously Danny would be the guy we would go with, and Hunter would be the backup, and we would just proceed from there. But like I said, after week one, there's a lot of things that you gotta go back and kind of figure out whether you played really well or you didn't play as well. And there's situations in all of it, I think, that was really good for us. In handling some adversity, obviously with Billy going down, being able to kind of sense that and feel that, and I can tell you it was definitely a different vibe than it had been in the past. I think the thing that stands out to me more than probably any of what we got to do a lot better job of is special teams wise. I think that we left some situations out there last week that we cannot have, and we've got to get better at. Whether it's the punting situation, whether it's down the ball inside, with the one rolled into the end zone, just our ability to affect the punter in more ways. So there's some things there that I thought that showed up as game one. Everything else that we were hoping to see was with playing clean and playing fast. I think there was things we obviously can get better and will get better and need to get better at. But as opposed to, I think both offensively and defensively, I was not surprised. I was happy with where we continued to progress through the entire game. The special teams was the one that kind of stood out to me. That that's not the probably the standard that which we want to be able to play by. And something that's going to be an asset for us throughout the entire year, both just in execution as well as in some of the efforts on some situational stuff, whether it was blocking the kick or even covering the kick. So those are areas for us this week to really kind of focus in on, as well as obviously things offensively and defensively. But wrapping it up, it was a phenomenal night with an incredible atmosphere that I know a lot of people enjoyed. I know my family enjoyed. I know the guys on the team enjoyed jump around and things like that. I don't know that I get to enjoy it quite as much when it's 10-0 and you're looking down a third and long situation. Just trying to make sure you're secure to what you're doing. But it was an awesome night with an electric environment, and hopefully we can create a lot of those in a game this week.
Questions here?
Go ahead. I think we can hear you, but go ahead.
Luke, you talked about Danny stepping in. He talked about that kind of line that you have to straddle between like being self-confident and kind of cocky at times as a quarterback. Just how do you see that coming out, and how he plays or how he carries himself around the program?
Well, I think it's authentic. I think that probably is one thing in a short amount of time that I felt, as well as I'm sure the guys have felt. There's a difference. I love an athletic arrogance. They're borderlines on some things that then become cocky that can, maybe rub some people. And I don't mean that you're worried about rubbing people the wrong way, but in the complimentary world that we want to be in, but I think he straddles the line. I think he does a really good job. I think it's authentic. I think he really does have a confidence in what he does, and you can see it every single day. But there's a lot of growth, and I'm sure he will be the first to tell you that. Whether he was prepared, he also probably recognized some areas where, okay, I got to do a better job in my opportunities to run this team and run this offense. So there'll be a lot of growth. I think that everybody, the old cliche of every coach, right, between game one and game two is where you see some of the greatest growth. I think you'll see some of the greatest growth in just the way that some of those guys that had opportunities for the first time go about their business to prepare for the way to play.
Jim.
Sticking with offense, we saw a lot of guys get touches, especially early in the game, and that happened during camp a lot too. Do you think that can be a strength of this offense?
I do, and I think maybe you're referring all three from the tailbacks. That there was some balance. Obviously, I think Dylan got the workload, but Darion got enough, and Cade got some, but also the wideouts. So as you saw throughout the camp, it wasn't like it was, hey, there's one target. Throughout the entire camp, I thought. There was days where guys would have 2-3 balls, but the next day maybe somebody else had 2 or 3 balls. So I really do believe that the strength of I'd say the skill positions offensively is that there's some there's some depth to what we're doing, and guys have different skill sets, and I think offensively we can use them in different ways. And obviously if you get a hot hand, whether it's at the tailback position or even at a wideout position, you would be able to kind of roll with those things, but. I think that the offense lends for us to be able to move the thing around so people can't kind of focus in on one specific thing. the amount of personnel that you use, the guys that you use, does kind of divvy up the opportunities on the field. So there's not one tailback, whether he's carrying the ball or not, that played, 70% of the snaps. So I think that, in my vision, that in the long run, that's what gives you the opportunity to continue to get better and play your best ball at the end of the year. And we got to continue it.
On your left, Coach.
Luke, Jackson Aker, a couple things. One, where have you seen him grow as he's kind of taken on this role this year? And then the other part of it is, as a guy who, I guess is officially a tight end, but he still does some fullback things, does that mean that maybe there's some more on his plate than the typical tight end?
Yeah, I think if we look back at it, I think in week one, we love Jackson. I think that he's one of the more versatile guys in college football, to be honest with you. Now, I don't watch a ton of it, obviously, just in week one. But I think that we maybe had a little bit too much on his plate. And I think Grant Steck going out and playing the way he did, and performing and playing fast, I think gives us a better opportunity maybe not to use Jackson in quite as many of those situations where we can kind of focus him a little bit more, at playing fullback, at playing tailback, at playing some of the H things, and maybe even be able to utilize him and get him the ball more than we probably did. The ability for us to move the ball, I don't think Jackson got a ball. And in my mind, that would be something that we got to do a better job of, because I think he's dynamic in a lot of different things, but he's pretty dynamic with the ball in his hand, catching it as well as running it. So I think as we continue to move down the road here and get better at the things that we do, finding where Jackson's strong suits are, we've got to continue to do that, because a guy like that's as versatile as he is, sometimes you become a jack of all trades, and you don't give him some of those opportunities to actually, show some of the skill sets that he does have.
Rohan.
Coach, after the game, you had mentioned how, given it was week one and ramping up a new offense, Billy got around 85% of the practice snaps kind of in the last 6-7 days. Kind of entering a similar situation with Danny now getting the ramp up. Do you expect something similar to come this week?
I don't know. I mean, we'll obviously probably recognize that and maybe not be 85%. And I don't know if it really was 85%. I just know that the nature of it, he was in there a bit more than Danny was last week. We still got to see. We're early in the week. I think it will kind of lend to how they take control of the things that they're doing, whether it's Danny or even Hunter. But by nature, I think that our one quarterback is going to get 75% of the snaps going into a week, just by nature. Everybody's new, and you got to kind of roll with the guy that's going to be in there and make sure. I think that the key is that the next guy has got to be really mature in what they're doing. They've got to, if they only get 30% of the snaps, they've got to be in tune to every single thing. And the good fortune for us is, Hunter's a guy that's played football, and he's an older guy. So if he only gets 30-some% of the snaps, I think he's going to be in a really good place.
Back here, Coach.
With Alabama on the horizon and hosting a team that maybe didn't have the showing they wanted in week one, how do you maybe make sure the guys don't look past what's happening this week?
Again, we've got so much to do and so much to work on that there's a competitive maturity within this team that I don't worry about something like that. It's another unique week in a sense that we played on a Thursday night, so your schedule isn't really in tune. So, today is Tuesday, which is a Wednesday for us in practice-wise. So there's a lot of things that the nature of it is, hey, we're gonna have an extra day to practice today, and whether that means, well, why would we have an extra day to practice? Maybe we should save that for down. No, the idea is, we understand that this is a progression, and we have to get better in all things that we're doing. And you just really rely upon those guys. Like, if you want to know the truth, like, I'm probably more animated and a little bit more on edge on practice yesterday and today than maybe I will be as we get into the nature of the Big Ten schedule. And it's just to make sure that we all are on the same page, coaches and players, to understand, like, this is an incredible journey, and we got to take advantage of every opportunity, regardless of whether it's practice on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or it's a game on Saturday, who your opponent is. Like, we know where we have to get to, and we need every opportunity to get there. And I think our guys understand that. There's a group of leaders that definitely embody that.
Cool.
Luke, you talked about Preston Zachman after the game being a calm but aggressive leader. Is there a moment or something that really stood out to you, like that's why you characterize him that way?
After last year, to be honest, not that I had a ton of conversations with Preston, but sitting down with him and kind of looking over last year's and challenging him in a way that, hey, look, you know the game, you understand the game. You got to be more aggressive in the things that you're doing. And I'm probably speaking a little bit more towards the end of the year, I don't know that I noticed a complete difference in spring football, but there was a difference. And then fall camp, just the nature of the guy out there taking charge. And like I told you before, I've always kind of been a middle linebacker, is the guy that takes charge. He makes all the calls, and somebody from within the middle. And we still have that, but there's a nature of from the back end of who's making a lot of those calls and really kind of helping lead those things on the field. But it's come along with his ability to be more aggressive, whether that's in his leadership, whether that's taking charge, and then obviously, as we saw on Thursday night, in his play. And those are aggressive plays that he made that to be honest with you, I don't know that he makes last year. I'm not saying he wouldn't have made the first interception. The second interception is really his ability to be aggressive, his ability to trust his instincts, and his ability to trigger in some ways. And we've seen it. I've seen it all through fall camp, and I'm encouraged and excited about where he continues to grow to.
Just working on something on non-conference scheduling. I think you're one of only a few Big Ten teams that's both playing a non-conference game against a Power 4 school and also not playing any FCS teams. Would you like to see a requirement for Big Ten teams either to schedule at least one P4 team or to
I don't know
schedule
that.
FCS?
I don't know that there's the time to talk. We all have opinions on scheduling and things like that, and hopefully where we're going in college football, these things won't be scheduled 10 years out, so you have a better idea and opportunity to schedule what's going to be best for you within your program. I think that as we've learned in college football, everybody by nature does what's best for them and their program, and that's the way you got to look at it. Whether you want to complain about the way somebody else schedules or the way you schedule, I mean, let's be honest, we all got to do what's best for us. We got to do what's best for our team and our program. And there's some things that are already dealt to us that we have to continue to go with, but where it goes in the future, to be honest with you, I'm not positive.
Evan.
Coach, even when he was being recruited a couple years ago, Sebastian Cheeks was kind of labeled as a tweener. Was he an inside linebacker? Was he an outside linebacker? A lot of times those guys can really struggle at this level to produce and find a home. What is it about him that's allowed him to be arguably the most consistent guy in that room?
You know what? I was excited to see what Sebastian did Thursday night, because it was his first real opportunity, to kind of start, to kind of do what he's done since spring football and all through fall camp, and I wasn't surprised, but I was really, really encouraged, because I had seen this consistency, I had seen this nature and this knack for being able to rush the passer, but also this ability to be physical in the run too, and so. I'm not saying we stumbled into the right position for him, but with some of the situations that happened even last year in fall camp, we kind of had to shift him over to the outside backer, and it wasn't hard to just figure. I think this is his natural position. This is his natural spot, and I still think he's young at what he's doing, but I do think I know that he's in the right position. I know he's going to get better, because he is one of those guys that maybe doesn't emotionally show it all the time, but is a guy that's kind of that perfectionist that's always working at it. And, I think he's just, to be honest with you, scratching the surface. I think there's a lot of things that he can do, we will continue to do with him. And it's not just going to show up sometimes in the stat sheet. I know that he had maybe a sack or didn't have a sack or I don't know what it is, but I can tell you this, that he's a guy that people are going to have to know that he's got some versatility, whether that's rushing, stopping the run, or even his ability to play in some coverage stuff.
Going back to Danny, kind of, you're mentioning some areas where he still needs to improve. Where do you see kind of the most path for growth for him, and how helpful has it been to have a guy with as much experience as Billy?
Actually, Billy and I talked about that last night, and he just kind of asked me, say, where can I help him? And Billy knows, but I think the truth of the matter is just understand the game, right? I mean, there's guys that sometimes just by nature have been really good players, whether it's been in high school, he goes as a freshman in college and starts. And sometimes when things come like that, you can just get used to being, I'm a ball player. And when the lights come on, I continue to play ball. And he has that natural, but sometimes that also stymies the growth of guys. And I see it, it's easy to see in the quarterback position. I see it in some other positions too, that sometimes the enemy of being great is really good. And I think that that's where I think he needs to take some of those next steps. That he is a ball player. He's got a confidence level that's legitimate, and so his ability to say, okay, now how do I take some of these things to the next level? Do I spend as much time working at the game as Billy does? Do I spend as much time working at the game as some of these other guys that are around college football? Because the expectations continue to grow, and then when you become the actual guy in a league like this with an expectation like this, like there's some other things that come along with it. And so I think that's the biggest thing is, there's some things that you don't play live with quarterbacks. It's really hard. Unless, like I said, unless you're Carter Smith as a freshman, and we stuck him out there and put him in those situations. So being able to take care of the football, being able to make sure you understand, even when you're scrambling and some things, that this is a level where you're not outrunning people. And so to me, that's just that knowledge of understanding the game that, yes, where I have confidence, yes, where I can make plays, I've got to know when are my best opportunities to make those plays and to take those shots, whether it's throwing the ball, whether it's running the ball, but it's taking care of the football. And I think that's where you saw him even throughout the game grow. And it's a hard position. Right? You're sitting there telling, you're up 10-0 or whatever the situation. Like, I don't want to, all of a sudden put negative thoughts in your head, but just remind him about taking care of the football. The situation, the complementary football, where we are within the game, also dictates as to how we wanted him to play. And I think as a new week goes, it'll give him an opportunity to play a little bit more, even some more of his style.
A few more. Jake?
Luke, we saw a handful, I think, of true freshmen play on Thursday. Just in particular, like Eugene Hilton Jr.,
Yeah.
Cooper Catalano. I think Catalano was on the opening kickoff. Just what do you tell those players? Do you tell those players anything before you head into the game? And what did you see?
Well, we had made the determination that we were going to play those guys. Sometimes you get to these younger guys, these freshman guys in particular, and you have a 4-game, kind of leeway, and how do you use those? And most of the guys that you say you're going to play in that week 1, you're not worried about holding and saving for the 4 games. And so those are guys where we're like, look, we're going to need these guys throughout the entire year. They are freshmen. Those guys came in early, so they're older freshmen. But I just try to remind them, by week 2, 3, and 4, we get into the Big Ten, like you're not a freshman anymore, and we're not going to treat you like a freshman. So if there's pressure on everybody, but within this program right now, the most pressure is on guys like that, because it's really easy when all of a sudden you become the 3rd-team guy and you take a couple reps during practice, or you become the scout team guy. Maybe you run down on kickoff, but you're down on the other end, being a look team. Like, it becomes a little bit, more comfortable. And those guys that are right there on the edge of the fire, I find out the most about them, because every day it is game day. And whether it's Eugene or whether it's Coop, whether it's Mason Posa and some of these guys, even some of the old linemen that are possibly in the mix of a 2, like, if you want to know who the program is most difficult on, I'm just going to tell you right now, it's those guys right there that are on the edge that maybe you haven't seen as much, but we know that if something happens, these are the guys that are going in. It's game day almost every day for these guys. And so, yes, I feel like those guys are close, and we're going to need them, and they're going to play.
Jesse?
Luke, after watching the film, do you believe you guys need to make any tweaks to the offensive line, specifically left tackle, or did you see enough to feel comfortable with the same going forward?
I think we've always kind of thought, we did it in fall camp. We moved those guys around a bit, and so that was one of those things where, hey, we got to figure out what this combination is going to look like. It's a long year. We're going to need a lot of guys. We've been very fortunate over the last couple of years with O-line to be able to kind of keep those guys healthy. I don't know that that's the nature of what really happens. So there'll be some shuffling around. We'll give some guys some other opportunities at different spots. But where we were in fall camp with being limited with some guys getting, dinged up and missing some time, it didn't give us as much opportunities to move those guys around and give guys opportunities at different spots, and even give guys greater opportunities to start, whether it's JP or Kerry Kadenko, just because of the nature of some of the injuries we had in fall camp. So I think you'll see some shuffling. You'll see some guys get some more opportunities. And I think that we also feel like, look, we don't know what the best kind of lineup is going to be, and that's what we've got to figure out here within the next 2-3 weeks.
Nick in the middle.
You noted Grant Stack. I know at fall camp, Coach Levin told us something like he's one of the hardest workers,
Mhm.
has the ability, but just wanted to see more confidence, consistency. Where have you seen that, and how can you continue to make that impact?
Yeah, I just think you're always, those are some of those things in week one you're curious to see, right? Guys work their butts off, and I'm not saying there's guys that don't. Obviously, there's different levels to it. Grant has done a great job, but sometimes those guys, the first opportunities to go out there, just the nature of how fast they play shows the confidence level. And if there's one thing I would say, I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he did all things right. I'm not saying, but he played at a speed at which we want to be able to see. That was that mid-season idea of, hey, there's some guys in this program that there's a lot of pressure on that maybe haven't played a lot of ball, and there's an expectation. Not that you're perfect, not that you're always right, but that you can play at a speed. And I thought that was probably the thing that showed up with Grant as much as anything. That the way he's played in practice, the speed, the aggressiveness he's played with, it actually stepped up a little bit even in the game. And so we were really excited and happy to see, his ability to play at that speed. And obviously made a big play on the catch, which I don't know that another one of those situations, I'm not sure how many times he actually had been in that to throw that. I'm not sure that wasn't a tuck spot before, and maybe even Lance Mason in through practice. But there he is. He's in there. He has an opportunity to make a play, and he makes it.
Two more. Mark and then Colton.
Dylan Jones' question. I guess I'm wondering, as far as, I wonder if there's something about maybe his mental makeup or approach that you've seen that has kind of helped, him use his physical too.
He is definitely one of those guys that every single day is like game day. He really does. He practices that way. He's got the mentality that way. It's, it's great to see, and that's kind of where he kind of, made the step up and kind of showed us, hey, this is the guy that's going to take the first snap at tailback. Nothing against the other guys. It's just his being tenacious, his toughness, his every single day, his ability to show us that, hey, he's going to make a cut. He's going to get the thing vertical, and that's the thing that we were looking for as much as anything. I think that room has competitive nature. That room has talent, and I think that he's made that room better because it is a competitive room, but he has, another little competitive edge, nature that makes a lot of those guys around him better. And the things he maybe wasn't as natural to him of catching the ball, you can see a guy that works at something, and it's become something that obviously he's made a lot better. And when guys are willing to work on the things that aren't their best skills, it shows you something about him. And so I think he had, not for a lot of yards, but he might have had 4 catches for like 8 yards or something, which is not something huge, but was also something that wasn't a strong suit of his. And he makes everything some way, somehow. He's going to make everything part of his strong suit. So I think he's separated himself in some of those ways, but he plays bigger than the 205 that he's listed at, and so we also have to be smart with him too.
Colton, bring us home.
Luke, I'm not sure how much experience you have with this during your head coaching career or even as an assistant with Jeff Grimes up in the booth. Just how did that kind of change the operation for you guys, or how much practice can you get with that to a game one situation?
No, I don't know that. I mean, I think he's been through the ringer a few times, and I wasn't worried about him not being in the booth for the first time and not having the guys in the field. I think that the way we go about the things that we do, obviously with huddles and with wristbands, and there's a lot that's explained within that. So I don't know that being on the field is overly necessary. He's got a lot of confidence in the guys that are down the field and the ability to look in guys' eyes. But I've had it all different ways. I've been the guy, calling defenses and been up in the box. I didn't love it, but I also knew that it gives you a little bit of different perspective. It gives you, the ability to really kind of be calm enough to do the things you need to do. And I think it can be much more difficult when it's on the field. And so that's a decision that I think he feels was best, and I don't think it has any issues with it. I mean, if anything, I think it helps us. It helps us in the rhythm because, as you see when you huddle, there is a rhythm that you got to be able to keep. And that was probably one of those things as Danny went in. If there was any of the growth that we've got to be able to do, it might have been there was some issues there, and that's just probably that new guy, that young guy, that getting 30% of the reps. We weren't as efficient in what we needed to be, getting in and out of the huddle, giving us the opportunity to do the things we need to do at the line of scrimmage. And as you noticed, or if you didn't notice, I think we burnt 2 timeouts in the second half in those situations, and that is not something that we want to do. If we burn them in the first half, I can live with it a little bit, but to burn them in the second half doesn't give you the opportunities if you need them in the fourth quarter, and that's where some areas we got to do a better job at.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thanks.